His Imperial Majesty Kaiser Adolf I Hitler the Hohenzollern of Germany travelled to my family home in Yarragon to check if Mr. and Mrs. Webb really lived there in early 1972. He was planning to check if my parents could have a technically eligible baby for his imperial family, provided the information he had was correct and they really lived there. He used the details he found in births, deaths and marriages, Victoria, Australia, that he looked up to see if my mother got married when she was around 18, of which there was only one entry. My father Kevin G. Webb marrying my mother Judith M. Marslen on the 3rd of May, 1958 in Mo, Victoria, Australia. That entry included the family home address at 27, Campbell Street, Yarragon, Victoria, Australia. He thought it was hilarious to go to the family home on the 18th of January, as that date was a German imperial public holiday and national day commemorating my imperial family becoming the constitutional monarchy of Germany in 1871. Kaiser Adolf I brought an employee of his to Australia, who was paid to come along on the trip. His mechanic and handyman, Mr. B. They met in around 1962 and Kaiser Adolf, Wolfgang to Italians, employed him for as a mechanic and handyman, 4 jobs he needed done, particularly restoring and repairing cars Kaiser Adolf purchased, which were left to me in his Italian estate. They spent quite a bit of time together but were never sexually partnered on an ongoing basis in any way. Mr. B had been sent to Italy from France to attempt to spy on Adolf. He ended up getting the job as mechanic and handyman. They parked outside my family home in Yarragon on what was going to be a severely hot day over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, hours after I had already been born at approximately 5:45 a.m. that morning. It was around lunchtime, between 12 and 1 p.m. on the 18th of January. Kaiser Adolf went to the front door to knock and check if anyone was home. There was no answer. He looked around like he was strangely familiar with the place, went around the veranda, checked the back door, and could not find anyone there and headed back towards the car. On his way back to the car he saw a nice-looking man across the road bending over in his garden, who had been watching him whilst he was trying to find out if anyone was home and had a good look at him. The man stood up and turned around. They looked at each other and both smiled, and my father's across-the-road neighbor said, "Are you looking for Kevin and Judith?" I want to make it clear Kaiser Adolf was skeptically going to the address from Australian marriage records, not even knowing if Mr. and Mrs. Webb even really lived there, thinking it was probably an attempt at a cruel practical joke of sorts. He came here for a look at Gippsland like a tourist and a laugh. My great-grandfather Kaiser Adolf I paused in shock at the question, then in a broad faked Australian accent he could not stop attempting said. Yeah, cynically, like if it was a practical joke, it was getting more elaborate. Our neighbor replied with, "They're not home, she's having a baby. You could try the local hospital in Warragul, she went in last night." He was quite excited about my father Kevin having another child and politely gave him friendly directions, and they were on their way towards Warragul. The instructions were to take the Prince's Highway, go past the Warragul cattle yards, turn left, and head south towards the hospital on the hill, can't miss it, big obvious building on the hill with a big chimney. They drove through Dunham and Nilma, and headed for Warragul, seeing the hospital to the south on the hill to the left. Kaiser Adolf I and the mechanic headed towards the hospital and turned left to go up the hill to it. They arrived and parked in the car park, with Mr. B staying in the car. Kaiser Adolf I went to reception in the lower part of the hospital at one end and asked, with a skeptical grin, if Mr. and Mrs. Webb were at the hospital, who were having a baby. He was asked what relationship he was to Mr. and Mrs. Webb and replied with, "I'm the great-grandfather," meaning of the baby. He was directed to the second floor of the other end of the building. He went to the other end of the hospital and headed inside. As he went in, he had garbled strange female screeching noises. Kaiser Adolf I headed up the same stairs my father Kevin did before sunrise, but in unbelievably hot after-lunch conditions and hearing the noise of a screeching screaming woman getting louder as he went up the stairs. When he got to the top of the stairs my mother screeched in a garbled out-of-control tongue-exhausted way, "Kill it, kill it. Have you got a gun? Just fucking shoot it or something," and etc. She had been yelling like a lunatic since my father Kevin left the hospital to go back to work around 6 a.m., for over 7 hours. A few topics with few variations on repeat the whole time. I was dead in the sink across from the stairs, not breathing with no pulse. My heart had stopped whilst Kaiser Adolf was climbing the stairs. I was being held under the water by yet another grunting thing, probably on drugs, possibly doing an impersonation of his own of what the baby from 1944 would have looked and behaved like when adult, who had something clearly missing, called Slobodan Praljak. I only found out who he was after he committed a very public suicide. He replied to my mother, who was through the doors in a room she had been in since morning, "No, I don't have a gun," as if everything was fine, I was dead, no need to panic, everything was under control. Kaiser Adolf I said, "What the fuck is she screaming that for? What is she screaming that for?" Then casually brain scanned her for injury and pain, and said, "She's not in pain or anything, what is she screaming like that for?" Mr. Praljak saw a little silhouette of a man reflected in the backsplash of the sink, let me go thinking I was dead, and panicked thinking he was busted with a dead baby and a screaming lunatic, people pretending to be hospital staff, drugs, etc. He started making hurried excuses why she was yelling, including claiming she was just exhausted, but could not speak English well enough to communicate what he was trying to say, and headed towards her to shut her up, when Kaiser Adolf said, "And what are you doing?" He headed directly to my mother through the doors to try to shut her up, even put his hand over her mouth. Kaiser Adolf I noticed something in the sink, bubbling a little. As he got closer, he realized it was a baby, me, and then hurriedly reached in, grabbed me, and pulled me out in both hands extremely gently. He recognized his DNA was in there somewhere when he touched my bare skin with his hands and held me out. There was a very heartfelt and sad, "Oh, no. How awful, the poor little child." He noticed I was not breathing and may be dead, but I was not cold and was seeming to move slightly or be strangely not totally dead. So, he started CPR immediately and tried to revive me. Kaiser Adolf Hitler the Hohenzollern held me upside down trying to get water out of my lungs, then realized that was wasting time. He then flipped me up and held me in one hand, bending me over backwards, holding my head and neck with his 2 forefingers so that my head was tilted back and my airway was open in the palm of his hand. He reached in and found my heart muscles with his 2 other forefingers under my underdeveloped ribs with his fingers almost crossed at the tips and started pumping my heart muscles as gently as he could with the tips of his fingers and then breathed in my mouth. He repeated this, getting more rhythmical, almost getting a foot tapping thing going on, and as he did, I seemed to get more responsive. He kept going until I started trying to breathe on my own and started making noise, and then he felt my heart restart under his fingertips. When it became clear he had revived me, he said at what seemed an annoyingly loud volume on multiple levels, "Zig hail their young baby," and was instantly absolutely thrilled with himself. He decided it was best to quietly walk off with me, just to make sure I was okay and take me away from the grunting thing, who clearly nearly totally killed me in the sink, who was through the doors with my mother, pleading her to shut up and putting his hand over her mouth to try to magically make her shut up, with a hand signal. Kaiser Adolf wandered off with me, thinking he better find a place to hide me and keep me safe, in case the man who drowned me came looking for me to finish me off after returning to the sink and noticing I wasn't dead in it. He took me into a small medical storage room similar to a closet, closed the door, then checked if the door could be secured. He sat down in the storage room and held me up against his chest gently with both hands, with me lying down sideways on, and tried to make sure I was breathing properly. He described what my heart should be beating like to me, trying to calm me down, telling me I would be fine. The storage room was almost totally sealed tight and completely dark apart from the light of the clear hot summer day coming through under the door. He started speaking to me quietly, saying he wouldn't let anyone hurt me, I'd be fine, and tried to keep me quiet to avoid attracting the attention of the man who drowned me to the medical storage room. He got the usual, "Are you going to be present for the birth?" like newborn question from me, the equivalent of, "And who might you be, kind sir?" He paused, very quietly sighed, and said quietly and slowly, "My name is Kaiser Adolf Hitler, but I'm really a Hohenzollern, and I won't let anybody hurt you." He then tried to think of a similar situation he had been in to talk to me about to make me feel better and keep me quiet, running through memories to find one. The registration documents for me were initially partially filled in by a nurse who was part of the afternoon shift, who asked my mother for relevant details, then completed fully by my father Kevin after he arrived back at the hospital, sometime after 10 p.m. the day I was born. They did not get the registration forms out until mid-afternoon, after a change of hospital staff had occurred, and that was hours after my 2 triplet siblings were already gone.